all-cause mortality versus the baseline. And I just want to note here, the CDC took down their mortality reporting between June the 2nd and June the 29th, and each of those lines represents a report date. They still are telling me they have a backlog, but it's really unfortunate for their reputation to have done it this way without notice. I'm not seeing, there's some differences in some areas, particularly cancer, but generally the conclusion is the same, which is your all-cause mortality, and that blue line, light blue line is the most recent, is still above your baseline. And that, by the way, is happening even though you had a decent amount of pull-through death for Alzheimer's patients, early in 2020 when, you couldn't, nursing homes were shuttered as well. So the picture's not particularly good. You look at the, as far as death goes, you look at the next slide. This is, what vaccines have been distributed versus mortality, and on the far right side of that, that's where the data is incomplete. Doesn't actually represent a decline, but did we stop people from dying? Sure, a few. And definitely over 65, but when you're talking about the broad distribution and all the populations that were covered, you're not really seeing a change in mortality. So the talking point even despite all that, the talking point has become, oh, well, the vaccines are good because they keep people out of the hospital and they keep them from dying. But we don't even know that if you look at the next slide, because remember, the vaccine formulation is based on the original Wuhan strain that, quote, protects against other variants, I guess. Nobody's really looked at that much. And the people that are being admitted to the hospital, there's some people with COVID, but very few of them have respiratory disease. So it is possible that the vaccine that they got, if they got a booster within the last 6 months, is protecting people from severe disease at this point in summer of 2022. But it's also possible that the variants themselves are not that dangerous. In other words, they're not going to make you sick in the absence of a immunization and a booster. And we can say that because of slide 31. This is a Swedish study. It's a huge population. N equals 1.6 million. It is a 1-to-1 match between unvaccinated and vaccinated. And as you can see, it's bracketed by the confidence interval, but the effectiveness of all vaccines, and they looked at Moderna, Pfizer, and one other, wanes fairly dramatically begins to really drop off around the 61 to 120 day mark. So if vaccine immunity is waning and administration of vaccines is declining, then the reason we don't have people in the hospital is probably because it's a disease that can be managed without additional boosters or vaccinations.